Welcome to this video series. I'm very excited about this. My name is Janine Gallizia, and now we're going to be doing the same thing for Artefacto. So welcome to the video. I hope you like it. And to be honest, work on this and you're going to see the results. Let's get painting. So as there is an underlying yellowy raw sienna, or in my case, gold ochre base, that's what I'm going to do this big shape with. And I am painting suggested shape. So suggested shape requires that much attention. We don't need to do anything perfect. We just need to throw it on. I don't even need to stay within my subject. From here, I'm moving to my boat, which I know I can leave some white, but I'm literally connecting it. I'm not keeping a separate shape, a separate line, or a white line to separate the subjects. I want them connected. And what was I saying? This one as well. So this one as well is connected. And I could, if I wanted to, expand on that and bring the masts already into the big shape. And I'm literally attaching them. Every single shape you could literally follow and weave in and out continuously. I'm not creating separate blocks. And what I want is I want that big structure. I want that big shape to look interesting. So I can work it first and make that shape look interesting. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't have to see its boats. I just want to look. Maybe I'll go down here. I just want to make something interesting. It's design. It's actually creating an interesting design that hopefully, when the painting is a little bit more developed, it creates something which looks good. And it will, because we're borrowing it from Bonington, and we can see it's already interesting. It's already interesting. Now, what I will do, however, is I'm actually going to connect that to the background. I'm actually going to go a little bit further just to show you. So there is a boat here, but that doesn't matter. I'm literally picking up the color from my boat. I'm going to push it across, and I'm literally carrying it to this side of the painting. And so what I've done here, which is not what Bonington did, but you know, this is what we do. We sort of take ideas and borrow them and then expand on them, is I've literally connected every single shape in the painting. I've literally glued them together, a little bit lighter, so that I have unity from the first few seconds. And that, boy, does that change everything. It changes everything. And then you're going to see it actually makes it extremely easy to paint the rest, because I already have a really interesting shape. I've already got unity. I've already started to lay tonal values and color harmony on the paper. So it's actually going to start to get complicated to mess up, to be honest. What I might do is I might even create, there is a little bit of a reflection here. I don't think I'm going to put the reflection here. I'm actually going to put it here. Okay. And I'm not going to make it all the way down here, because if I did, I'm going to make a filled in square. So I'm just going to do a little bit here, because that gives me a nice sort of like up and down movement down here, which I think is a little bit more interesting, maybe even a little bit larger. So it comes out a little bit to the left side of the painting. All I'm doing is trying to make this big shape interesting. I don't have to be intelligent about it or fabulous about it. It just has to look interesting. So from there, all I need to do is expand my tonal values and my color choices. That's it. That's absolutely it. So we could do this painting in no time at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a, let's say a cooler color. It's in absolutely no order whatsoever. So this is my burnt sienna. I'll take off this, here we go. I'm going to put some burnt sienna, and I'm going to throw some ultramarine blue to make a cool brown. And I'm not going dark. This is a mid value, a light to mid value. And I'm just going to suggest what could be, it kind of look like rocks actually. Rocks, maybe it's part of a pier. You can actually use your imagination to turn it into whatever you want it to be. But I think I'll go a little bit warmer in this corner and a little bit cooler in the background. So perhaps a little bit more burnt sienna than ultramarine blue. All right, so what I want to do is I want to actually create a base. This base, you notice that I'm not painting the sky either. You'll notice that. We'll get to that after. This base, again, just has to be interesting. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to find a way that I can connect it to the boat at the back that I also want to be quite cool. There we go. That's that done. And it's becoming interesting already. Maybe I'm going to repeat a little bit of that tonal value, that color, and you're going to see that all of a sudden things start developing and we haven't really done anything. So the underlying color for this boat that we've got in the foreground is kind of like a burnt sienna color, and it is really where the focal point in this course is the real fundamentals that can take absolutely anybody, whether you're an amateur, a beginner, or a professional, to a higher level. We can all move to higher levels. Now, a lot of people are feeling stuck. A lot of people don't know how to progress, and this is a game changer, and it's something that you can do straight away that gives you the results directly in your very next painting. So in my focal point, I'm looking for precision. In the areas around, I'm looking for suggestion. Suggestion is shapes that are suggested. So we don't really know everything about them. Maybe I know it's a boat, maybe I don't. It's just suggesting something. However, the precise areas of the painting is where we're going to get the eye to go. This is where the masters were actually very, very severely dramatic in their choices. They wouldn't have 10 precise areas of the painting. They really narrowed it down much more than we do. I kind of think sometimes today we complicate things more than we need to. And when you look at older paintings, you see they simplify their subjects so much more. And I think that that's also something that I think we can learn from. So I'm actually picking up burnt sienna, and I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna in this for subject in the front. You're going to see that I'm still not focusing at all on any details. I'm literally just blocking in color and repeating the color. Now what am I doing? Remember that yellow that I put down, which I was saying was the structure? That's that big continuous shape. And then I said what we're going to be doing is layering composition on top of that. Composition was what? The way we arrange the color and the tonal values. So what I'm doing here, the color, it would be nice if I repeated it. Let's repeat it here. Okay, this now is moving away from Bonington's painting. We're using it as a base. We're not going to copy it, because I think you guys are all capable of doing more. But also it's an exercise of how we can actually use this ourselves rather than just copy it. But I don't want to just have them separate. So I'm actually going to find a way of sort of connecting them. And look at that. I don't paint over what I've already got, but the big shape's connected, the brown shape's connected, the orange shape's now connected. And really all I need to do is, as this dries, is just finish the subject, and the base is already there, which is why it's a shame. A lot of people you don't have to paint structure in this way, but a lot of people don't focus on structure because it's that easy. Sometimes it's a little bit confusing to see how to use it. But once we realize it's the entire painting, it's the unity. Doesn't it change it? Doesn't it make a difference? Color does make a difference, but you have to be careful. Just don't put it everywhere. Don't go overboard with it, because it will drown out the rest of the subject. That's a little bit too dark. All right, so all I'm going to do is layer onto a bit of orange, and we can pretty much leave it like that, to be honest. So I'm going to go straight into my orange here. And I'm just going to add whatever it is. Who knows? It's just a little bit of something brighter. Maybe put a little couple of oranges somewhere else in the painting so that they actually bounce off each other. And we could leave it like that. We could leave it like that. I'd be tempted to keep playing with it, but I know that's probably not a good idea. So,
We have Reina asking, how and where do you use intuition and logic in your paintings?
oh, logic is all the time. Intuition is actually all the time as well.
Yeah.
I think you just see that because I probably overworked this one. I was just having too much fun. But intuition and creativity and letting the painting evolve and basically not trying to control the painting, but sometimes when something happens, you just go with the flow is actually what I do all the time. I don't think, any other, I start with an idea and the actual painting process is absolutely creative and adapting and balancing. And yeah, I don't actually follow the subject at all at some point. Yeah.
And I have a question for someone who has painted from references and maybe painted from a lot of courses and feel like, well, I know watercolor painting. I think I know all of what I need. What do you think that person would experience if they were to go through your program?
I think one of the main things that I've heard and seen over the years is that technique is not everything. And so what happens is that people will try to get a good technique. They'll develop their technique. They'll try to improve their technique. You must paint every day to be able to get a good technique is what you hear. But the thing is that at one point you may have already been there. People get frustrated because after their paintings become technically good, but they don't see themselves in their painting, or they're not able to be creative in their paintings or create their own style in their paintings. And so that's a big deal because just copying the subject is not necessarily where satisfaction comes in. So I think it's gaining the confidence to lose the subject, create the structure, lose the subject, and then find it to the degree that you want. Bring it back. In this painting, it's virtually abstract what I did. I've actually overpainted it because I was just having too much fun. But I won't be upset with myself. I will let myself go wherever I want it to go. And I think that's where our creativity and the happy artist comes from. Because when you try to control your painting too much, it doesn't work. It rarely works. So you actually need to loosen up a little bit.
We have a question from Diana who says, are most of your paintings wet on dry? I struggle with wet on wet. I think many people can relate to that, that when they follow certain instructions, they need to have a very good watercolor technique to be able to paint in the same way that the instructor that they're learning from. What would you say both about do you usually paint wet on dry, and also how important is it to know those specific things, that specific technique, how important is that in your way of painting and teaching?
Wet on dry is the painting technique that I start with. So I don't wet my sheet at all when I start. So I paint wet on dry. But then I paint wet in wet. So I don't let the wash dry because that's how I create the suggestion. It's in the wet paint that I go back into the wet paint and then I start creating those soft edges, the suggested shape, and then later when the paper's drier, the more defined shape. So why are they important? The wet technique, so that's wet on dry and wet in wet, actually covers every single kind of precise shape, suggested shape that you want on big shapes. When you're painting dry on dry, or even, yeah, I'd say mostly dry on dry, you're in the details. Wet on wet if you want to, that's great, but sometimes people wet the whole sheet and then they find that they're unable to keep the whites. They're unable to put the edges where they want them to. But painting on dry gives you the ability to do anything. Yeah.
Thank you. People are writing that one of the biggest takes away here is to use a tissue because that creates that loose painting style Nadine writes, great Zoom today. It's fun to watch Janine paint so loosely and fast. Thank you, Hannah, for hosting. Thank you, Nadine. Jackie says, love watching you paint. Always so amazing. Thank you so much, both you and Hannah. Using the tissue is new to me. And Ratir says, I like this style of looseness and freedom. And Jessie writes, oh, such a good question. After this question, I will pop back into my phone because I've saved several wonderful questions. Jessie writes, can you have multiple structures? Do you do structure in the first washes? Great questions.
Um, simplicity is better. Simplicity creates a clearer impact. The more we try to be complicated in a painting, often the more we'll lose the viewer, the message, or the impact of the subject or whatever it is we're trying to get across. You could easily create a united shape in every single wash, but you don't really want to create a second wash which covers your first wash, or a third wash which again covers your second wash. So each wash would be smaller in surface area anyway. So I wouldn't suggest aiming at one structure per layer if you paint in layers, because you'll just be overworking areas that you may not need to. But definitely the main one is the first one, and that's where the glue, everything just attracts or attaches to itself, and you have the base. So then you just bring your subjects back on top of that, how figurative you want or how abstract you want. Simplicity is so much more powerful, so underrated, and more complicated than being complicated.
Yeah.
So aiming to be simple everywhere you can is where you're going to get strength.
Wonderful. Ah, so inspiring. We have some questions from early on, and Margarita asked, how do I deal with the darker colors on my painting and focus on them if I'm just painting one subject, for example, a cat? I think the question is, how do I use structure when painting one specific main character? I think that's the question. Or how do I use values and structures if I'm painting a cat, for instance?
If you're painting a cat, if you're painting a portrait, because it's the same thing, you're going to want to connect it at some point to the background, or the foreground, because otherwise it's just an isolated shape floating in the middle of the paper. So you're going to connect it somehow. Ideally, maybe it's through a cast shadow. Maybe behind the dark cat is a dark window, so the cat blends into the dark window. Ideally, you're going to find, it's part of your creativity, a way to connect the background, the middle ground, and the foreground. And you can do it with any subject. It doesn't have to be like what I did today, is sort of like a logical subject in the sense it's got that background, middle ground, and foreground. But a cat, a portrait, you can absolutely do the same thing. Absolutely connect them. But sometimes through cast shadows, sometimes through objects or things in the foreground or background.
Or by using technique. Let me see if I can find that image that you had, both of the flowers and also the face, where you definitely, of your older paintings. I just have to scroll all the way to them, because I think that they show one way of doing that, at least, where we can really make the subject merge, even though it doesn't have a foreground, midground, and background. You have definitely created that merge in both of these flowers, as well as the cups and the face.
Yeah, the face is a lot older, but you can definitely look, if you look at the right side of the head, you can see how the light background merges into the back of the clear hair. But there's no definition there. There's no line there. The same is with the mustache, with the barb. The painting is actually quite vibrant. It's what happens when you have older paintings. You also have older cameras, so the quality is not necessarily the same. But if you look at the flower painting on the right, look at the blue on the cup, how the blue on the cup merges with the blue in the reflection, and it just sort of fuses into the foreground. It just sort of merges into the foreground. You can connect shapes anyway. It can be connecting the eye onto the skin. It can be connecting a tree to the ground. But what that does is it actually makes that subject belong to the rest of the painting. By connecting it, it actually attaches it to something else and makes it part of the painting, not just a floating cutout shape that's stuck on the painting.